We need to keep.
Thank you, Mr.
We
Chairman.
need to move on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now I recognize the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Jordan, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to walk through the timeline here real quick. May 10th, 2013, Lois Lerner, unprecedented, goes to a bar association meeting here in town 3 days before you're going to issue your report.
Correct.
They wanted to get ahead of it, get their spin on it. So right from the get-go, the IRS is not being transparent, not helping the American people get to the truth, because she goes and lies. And she says it's line agents in Cincinnati, May 10th, 2013. 12 days later, there is a preservation notice sent to people in the IRS. Wasn't followed, we found out. So 12 days later, May 22nd, 2013, notice that says, don't destroy any evidence, right? We want all the emails. We want all the documents preserved. Is that right, Mr. Camus?
Yes, sir.
Okay. August 2nd, 2013, there's a subpoena for the same documents they're supposed to preserve. There's a subpoena to give them to Congress. Right, Mr. Camus?
Yes, sir.
February 2nd, 2014, the IRS learns, not just anybody at the IRS, the chief legal counsel learns that there's a problem with Lois Lerner's hard drive and emails are missing. Right, Mr. Camus?
That's correct.
1 month later, despite the preservation order, despite the subpoena, 1 month after the chief counsel knows we're missing some emails, 422 tapes containing those emails are destroyed. Right, Mr. Camus?
That's right.
And 3 weeks after that, March 26, 2014, the head of the IRS, Commissioner Koskinen, sits right where you're sitting, Mr. Camus, and he tells this committee, we're going to get you every single email Lois Lerner has sent. Right, Mr. Camus?
That's what I understand. Yes, sir.
So, preservation order, subpoena, don't destroy anything. They destroy it. 3 weeks later, the guy in charge tells us we're going to get you everything. And they've already been destroyed. So, here's the question. How in the world could that happen? This is the biggest story in the stinking country at that time. How in the world, with a preservation order and a subpoena, do they destroy 422 tapes containing, according to your investigation, potentially 24,000 emails? How does that happen, Mr. Camus?
It's an unbelievable set of circumstances that would allow that to happen. It is going to be fully documented in our report, and I'm not sure I could describe it to you in 5 minutes.
You can't. The reason you can't describe it because there's no explanation for that other than they were trying to not help the American people get to the truth. They were trying to hide something. They were trying to hinder the. I don't know any other explanation, or unless it's the most. I mean, it's unbelievable when you got a subpoena, a preservation order, and you destroy 24,000 emails. Who's responsible ultimately? Might it be the guy, Mr. Camus? Might it be the guy who sat where you're sitting, the commissioner of the IRS, and assured this committee, and more importantly, assured the American people they would get us all the evidence? Might he be the guy who's responsible?
It's possible. The management team.
Might it be the head of the IRS who didn't, according to your testimony, didn't even look at all the sources for potential Lois Lerner emails? Isn't that correct? They didn't look at all the sources?
They did not.
Might it be the guy who said this under oath in this committee? We will get you every single Lois Lerner email. Might it be that guy?
The management team is certainly someplace to look.
But doesn't the buck stop with the guy at the top?
That could be said.
I think it can certainly be said when he's the one who assured us that it was all going to happen in spite of this fact pattern. What's next, Mr. Camus?
We're going to generate our report of investigation that will clearly delineate step by step how this occurred, where the breakdowns were, and it will provide the evidence that I've been describing in both our written and oral testimony here today.
Do you believe there's criminal activity here, Mr. Camus? Because it sure looks like it to the American people, in my judgment.
Our investigation did not uncover any at this time.
But do you believe you might uncover that?
There are always times at the conclusion of an investigation, especially when an investigation gets a public forum, that somebody hears something and they come forward with new information. But after a very thorough investigation, we have not uncovered any evidence.
But it might have helped if we'd have had 24,000 emails to look at, mightn't it?
That would have certainly been useful to have that material.
Yeah, I would think so, too. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. And now I recognize the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Cartwright, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, Mr. George, I want to ask you about your ever-changing estimates of the new emails that you recovered from Mrs. Lerner. Your number started at 80,000 emails in February, then it dropped to 32,000 emails at the end of February. Then last week it fell to 6,400, and 9 days later now it has sunk to about 1,000. Your new number today is 98% lower than the first number you gave us. You know, this is a room where we like to hear the truth. There was a great justice of the Supreme Court of the United States, Oliver Wendell Holmes. He talked about the truth. He said, the truth is tough. It's not like a bubble that you can prick and it'll explode. It's more like a rugged football that you can kick around all day and it doesn't lose its shape and it doesn't lose its form and it stays the same. The truth doesn't change. And when you're talking about a story that's true, Mr. George, it's the same the first time you tell it, the second time you tell it, the third time you tell it, and the fourth time you tell it. The truth doesn't go 80,000 and then 32,000 and then 6,400 and now 1,000. In fact, in the last 9 days, you dropped from 6,400 discovered emails to 1,000, and I'm looking at the letter dated June 16 from your office. This is not from you, this is from Gladys Hernandez, your chief counsel. Is she a chief counselor, Mr. George?
Yes, she is.
Okay. Hello, Gladys, how are you? Thanks for the letter, but Mr. Chairman, I would ask for unanimous consent to enter this June 16 letter from Gladys Hernandez into the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
And I was reading the letter, Mr. George, from Attorney Hernandez that says 6,400, and there's no caveat. There's nothing in there that says, oh, this could be fewer. You know, could be fewer than 6,400. There's no proviso in there. It doesn't say there could be duplicates in here. Stand by for the next number, could be coming next week. We didn't hear that from you either. Now, this is not new to you, Mr. George. You were a Republican staffer for this committee. You understand that headlines are generated out of this committee. You understand how irresponsible it can be to throw out numbers with little or no basis because you know they'll work their way into headlines, and folks who like to make insinuations like the previous questioner, will throw that into headlines intentionally. And there was also a question about the prior chairman pressuring your office to come up with quick, fast turnaround information. Well, newsflash, the previous chairman is the previous chairman. He is no longer here. You are no longer under that kind of Republican pressure to turn over to this committee, and it certainly doesn't say anything about that in Gladys Hernandez's June 16 letter. The question is, why, Mr. George, would you send out letters and put out numbers that you hadn't fully checked, knowing full well, as you do, that these numbers will work their way into these fabulous headlines that we see every day, the breathless reporting of all of these huge numbers of emails that have been discovered? Why, Mr. George? Why do you do that?
Well, first of all, I would like to point out that when I had the honor of serving as a staffer here, it was with Congressman Stephen Horn, the late congressman from Long Beach, California, who admonished us. We never leaked information that during the course of an investigation prior to a hearing. So I comported myself in that way. I made a request of staffers during the course of this investigation to act likewise. They did not do so. I can't control their behavior. Secondly, it was a response to a request that we received. In all candor, this was a transmittal letter, Congressman. I haven't seen this before. It was simply a transmittal letter from our counsel to the committee. So I would have request the opportunity to review this and to respond precisely. But thirdly,
you've heard of Oliver Wendell Holmes, haven't you?
I went to Harvard Law School, sir.
And
yes.
you agree with his statement about the truth, don't you?
I certainly.
And don't you agree that when you keep changing your story the way your office has, you lose your credibility and people stop believing that you're telling the truth. I
Congressman-
yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. Recognize the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Wahlberg, for 5 minutes.